The Minnesota Timberwolves were leading the Memphis Grizzlies by 26 points at one point during Game 3 of their best-of-7 series last night, dudes. They went on to lose that game on their home floor to a Memphis team that looked dead in the water on multiple occasions. OMG. Two separate 20-plus point leads, by the way, during that game. Memphis outscored them 37-12 in the fourth quarter. I mean, look at the odds there at the bottom of the screen. Lowest money line odds during the game for the Timberwolves, minus 5,494. Highest money line odds for during the game for Minnesota, plus 700. Absolutely banana land what we saw last night. Like, Minnesota had an opportunity just to shut the door, take the 2-1 series lead. Instead, they crumbled. They crapped themselves. These two dudes will not under pressure. DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne and Jeff Pratt. Yo, Gare Bear, last night, did it tell you more about Minnesota, or did you learn more about Memphis in that situation?
I wouldn't say I learned more about Memphis, but it probably just confirmed what I think we already thought we knew about Memphis. And I do just like imagining the guy who like live bet the Grizzlies when they were down in the second quarter and then was like, oh God, but then somehow found the strength to do it again at the end of the third quarter. That guy had a great night. Yeah, I think the thing with Memphis, we've kind of seen a similar team construct work its way from the regular season to the postseason in the past. And there's this stigma with teams like Memphis that they're almost too deep. Like, it's an advantage in the regular season, but it's a disadvantage in the postseason. But I think the difference between a lot of those types of teams that we've seen in the past is they still have a legitimate superstar in Ja Morant. And he didn't even really play like a legitimate superstar last night. And they still found a way to come back from, as you said, Emerson, two different 20-point deficits. They should beat the Timberwolves. I think we all know that.
Yep.
So I'm not like crowning them yet, but it was a really, really impressive showing from a team on the road in, the first real playoff game we've seen in Minnesota in quite some time. So it's a pretty hostile environment.
Yeah, Pratt, I mean, Gary's onto something there. Like, Ja Morant, like, he didn't have his best night by any stretch, but, his supporting cast there also stepped up. Desmond Bane, like Brandon Clark. Time for the fourth biggest comeback in playoff history with your Celtics in 2002, Jeff, and 2017, the Cavaliers. Is there a silver lining, though, here for the Timberwolves at all?
No, there's not. This game tells me more about Minnesota. Crazy offensive runs is what I expect from a team like the Grizzlies. They came into the playoffs scoring the second most points per game in the league, just behind Minnesota, by the way. So this one was always set to be a high-scoring affair. The fact that they were able to pull off this comeback without Ja playing at his best was definitely surprising. But Memphis is an offensive juggernaut. That's what we expect out of them. On the other hand, this collapse for Minnesota, it's the nail in the coffin for them in this series. After stealing game one in Memphis, we thought this team could actually be for real, maybe. And then they blow not one, but two 20-point leads over the course of one game. I'm not sure how that's really possible. I put a ton of blame on Chris Finch here. How do you not call a timeout during that huge run that let Memphis back into the game in the fourth quarter? That's an inexcusable error. And then Karl Anthony Towns, this is the biggest game of your career up to this point, and you drop 8 and 5. That's just embarrassing, and it's not the first egg that he's laid in the playoffs and throughout the play-in tournament. I don't see a way the Timberwolves can recover in this series, and they could have to look at some potential moves to shake up the roster this offseason.
Yeah, that's a good point, because in game one of this series, Pratt, he had, 29 points? Let's look at the other three postseason games this season, though, for Cat. Playing versus the Clippers, 11 points. You mentioned the 8 points last night, and then game two against the Grizzlies, 15 points. Like, that's a dude that team relies on, obviously, at this stage of the game. As we shift our focus to tonight, what do you think, Jeff? Can the Hawks, 1.5-point underdogs, can they avoid going down 3-0 here?
I think so. Look, Miami's been fantastic in the first two games of this series, so I'm not taking anything away from the Heat. But if Trae Young is who we think he is, then he's going to bounce back from this relatively underwhelming start to the series and have a really fantastic game. Over the past 2 years, when the Hawks have really needed Trae to step up, he's typically been able to do so. And I'd feel more comfortable if the Hawks had Clint Capella, but they have been completely different at home this year compared to their road record. They're 16-25 on the road, 27-14 at home, which is tied for the third best home record in the East this season. I don't expect Jimmy Butler to drop 45 again, probably for the rest of the playoffs. That's just not who he is, at least not on a consistent basis. I think the crowd's behind Atlanta, and they can win one and make this one maybe a bit of a series, or at least push it towards a gentleman's sweep.
Okay. How do you feel about it, Gare Bear?
Yeah, I mean, historically, if an overwhelming underdog is going to take a game in the series, it tends to be that third game. Maybe the Heat take the foot off the gas pedal a little bit. I know our recent examples of this are not great in terms of how they finished, but even if you just want to look at the last 2 days, Raptors go up 17 points in the first half against the 76ers playing game 3 at home. We just talked about the Timberwolves, who had 2 separate 20-point leads playing game 3 at home. There is something to be said about that team coming back, playing that first home game. And I think it's really important, as Jeff mentioned, the Hawks, one of the biggest teams in terms of the disparity on the road and at home. In fact, they finished the season incredibly strong, even stronger than they started the season in Atlanta. Their final 7 regular season games, they were 6-1 at home with a 10.9 net rating. They are 9-0 ATS their past 9 games against teams with a winning record on the road. So they beat good teams when they're playing at home. And those stats don't even include the play-in game where they absolutely bludgeoned the Hornets. So they're just a different team when they get to play in Atlanta. I kind of like Hawks money line at plus 100. I think if they're going to take one, it's going to be tonight. It's the last chance they have.
Gary, how about Milwaukee? So they're 2.5-point favorites here on the road. Do you believe, how confident are you that they can bounce back and cover tonight?
So this one's tough. I mean, Chris Middleton's really important. You look at the on-off numbers for the regular season. The Bucks only outscored their opponents by 0.3 points per 100 possessions when Chris Middleton was off the court. Now, you'd hope that Bud is going to start playing Drew Holiday and Giannis Antetokounmpo even more in the absence of Chris Middleton. It really generally takes someone just absolutely forcing Bud's hand to start playing these guys major minutes, even in the playoffs. And that could be the solution to what you do without Chris Middleton. And I think that's probably going to happen tonight. And I also still, even with how competitive the Bulls have been in the first 2 games of this series, even with DeMar DeRozan looking as good as he has looked in game 2, in game 1, he was terrible. I just still can't shake the stigma the Bulls have from the regular season. They don't beat good teams. And I still think Milwaukee is a good team, even without Chris Middleton. This is a team that is 5-15 ATS their last 20 games as an underdog. They don't win the games they're not supposed to win. So I'm just going to take the Bucks here.
All right, Jeff, which side do you fall on here?
I've been hating on the Bulls all season, but I actually think the Bucks might be in trouble here. As Garion touched on, throughout his career, Milwaukee's 82-91 without Chris Middleton in the lineup. We all know just how important he is to the Bucks. He showed it last year in their championship run. Anytime Giannis takes the floor for your team, you have a great chance to win. But Chicago's hungry for playoff success. They've been waiting for it for a long time. And despite this Bulls team crawling to the finish line, stealing a game in Milwaukee should be enough to energize them for this one. DeMar DeRozan looks like he's back on track after a pitiful game 1. And we haven't even seen the best from Zach LaVine yet in this series. If Nikola Vucevic can continue to play well against Brook Lopez, I like the Bulls' odds of taking this game and the lead in the series, which would have sounded absolutely ridiculous a week ago.
All right, cool. How ridiculous does it sound, Jeff, that the Pelicans here can win this one tonight against the Suns, again, without Devin?
I don't think it sounds that ridiculous, Emerson. I think I'm continuing the trend of fading teams who are missing a key star and taking New Orleans in this matchup. The Suns haven't been as good as you think without Devin Booker this season. They were 8-6. Most of those losses were against solid teams, the Warriors, the Bucks, the Clippers twice. Meanwhile, Phoenix looks like they had absolutely no idea how to stop the Pelicans in game 2. They were going to lose that game whether Devin Booker got hurt or not. Between Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas, and a couple of these solid rotational pieces, New Orleans has a lot of firepower for the Suns to keep up with. It's always fun to look at how teams do historically in these matchups as well, and the stats are definitely on the Pelicans side here. They have a 71.4% win percentage at home in game 3s, outscoring opponents by double digits in those wins. I think New Orleans actually wins this one and puts quite a bit of pressure on Phoenix for the rest of this series.
Yeah, for sure. Gary, how much pressure is on Phoenix now?
I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how much they do fall off on one side of the ball in particular without Devin Booker. I mean, this is a team that won over 60 games this season, but their offensive rating with Booker on the court was 119 points per 100 possessions. That falls off to 110 points per 100 possessions when Booker has not been out there so far this season. Their saving grace is that they get better defensively. They were only allowing 105 opponent points per 100 possessions, which would basically be the best defense in the NBA if prorated across the entirety of the season. So that's what they're going to have to lean on tonight. And so far in this series, really the only time they have stopped the New Orleans Pelicans is when Jonas Valanciunas was missing like bunnies the entirety of the first quarter of game one. He stopped doing that in the second half and in game two, and suddenly it got uber competitive. So this is probably more of like a stay away for me tonight. I don't necessarily trust the Pelicans to actually win this game, but I do think it's going to be incredibly close. I would probably lean Suns, but again, I don't have a strong feeling here. I just think it's going to be hyper competitive.
All right, let's go over to the DFS side, though. Gary, which favorite high-priced DFS dude is your dude tonight?
So I think just putting aside Giannis, who is like the easy answer here, I kind of just think Chris Paul is like a free space. This sort of seems like it's not quite the same as when Paul is out and you just have to put Devin Booker into a lineup, but it's pretty close. If one of these guys is out and the other one is less than $9,000, it's really just kind of simple logic here. I mean, Paul averaged 1.27 DraftKings points per minute with Booker off the court during the regular season. And so far in this series, even with Devin Booker, playing a majority of the minutes, Paul is averaging almost 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. He's basically locked into a double-double in this contest. It's going to be a little up-tempo because of how the Pelicans play. I just think Paul should probably be closer to 10K considering Booker isn't playing. So the fact you're getting him at 8-9 is just a steal.
All right, Jeff, how much money are you spending here on your high-priced dude?
I am spending exactly as much money as Garion is spending and rolling with Chris Paul here. I think he's probably the obvious play. Obviously, Giannis is $1,800 more expensive than any other player on this slate. If you want to throw him in your lineup, that's fine. You're getting guaranteed production. I think he might be the only player you can say you're getting guaranteed elite production from on this slate. But as Garion was touching on, I won't add too much. Chris Paul, when Devin Booker out of the lineup, he's going to have to step up. He racked up 64.25 DK fantasy points in game one of this series. He's going to see the ball in his hands a lot more tonight at 8,900. I think he's a pretty strong play against a subpar Pelicans defense.
Okay, good stuff, dudes. That's all the time we have to talk NBA. Hopefully we got a nice, fun, drama-filled slate tonight. We do have some NFL to discuss because a week from yesterday, the NFL draft. So it's basically less than a week away. And leading up to that major moment next Thursday, we are going to be counting down the top 5 busts in NFL history. We're going to reveal number 5 on this show coming up a little later. But right now, our analysts are going to tell you exactly how they made their choices here.
When you think about what a bust is,
Definition of a bust.
When I think about an NFL draft bust,
My definition of a bust is pretty simple. It's anybody that just falls short of expectations.
For me, a bust is someone who doesn't perform relative to his positional value in the draft.
if you're using like a first round pick or whatever on somebody, you would think that this person is going to turn out and be the talent that you're paying for.
Plus the guy who comes in to be the best player in the draft, the best player in his position, and just falls exceedingly short.
When you think of what makes someone a bust, it can be a number of reasons.
Injuries can play into that.
Personal issues.
The player's own work ethic,
And then there's just scouts misjudging players.
but also some of the things that maybe the player can't control, team environment,
picking between Peyton Manning or an alternative.
the players around him.
You don't pick your landing spot. That's just bad luck. But it's those players that get built up.
All this hype, all this excitement, all this marketability or whatever, and then he does absolutely nothing in the league and he's gone in the blink of an eye.
That's the anatomy of a bust. You got to have that perfect formula.
When you think of bust, is there a specific team that comes to mind?
Whenever the Browns draft somebody, you automatically think it's going to be a bust.
The Browns, just year after year, they just don't know how to get it right.
Oh, I mean, it's the Raiders.
I think we got to go with the Raiders. I think the reason you think of the Raiders when you think of busts is because of their love of drafting guys with speed.
Just a team that time and time again have overvalued athletic talent.
If they draft somebody, that player's going to be a bust. It has to be the Browns. That's almost what they're known for.
I always get attracted to the athletic talent too. I'm not putting myself above the Raiders in terms of that.
We all think that we know more than we actually do until we're actually in the moment.
I think I would be the guy that drafts the bust because I never get lucky in life.
Most GMs aren't very good at this.
I think that the draft is still a crapshoot. Even like the most skilled draftees or draftors in the NFL, they still make bad decisions a lot.
If I was a GM, I would absolutely have the ability to identify busts. I would never draft one, and I would have a perfect, pristine record and be one of the best GMs of all time.
All right, from bust to baseball, Steve Buchanan, DraftKings contributor, RotoWire's Eric Halterman. Good to have you guys here today. Good morning. Bukes. Bukes, what'd you think about the Yankees yesterday? The intentional walk of Cabrera to keep him at 2,999 hits for his career.
You know what? They're just trying to do anything they can to stay in the news because, a storm is coming, as Catwoman said to Batman in a few movies ago. So they're just trying to do anything they can to cover up that storm.
Wait, is that a spoiler alert for this new one that just came out?
Oh, you'll have to wait and find out.
Halterman, how'd you feel about that move? Little salty there by the Yankees?
I mean, if this was Cabrera's last ever at bat, I'd be a lot more worried. I think he's going to have a few more chances to get to 3,000. Yeah. I think we're probably going to forget about it in a week or so. So I think if they're managing to win games, that's probably fine.
So you don't blame them? You don't blame them for doing it?
I mean, are they really in the business of giving milestones to other teams' players? I don't think that's their main goal when they start a game. So I don't care too much.
I think every at-bat the rest of the season, he should be intentionally walked. I don't think they should be given a chance to have a hit at all, Eric, but that's just me.
That would be fun. I think there's some, 100 years ago, a team did that to a rival in the last series so that their guy could win a batting title or something like that.
Oh,
so there's precedent for it, but not for, 6.5 months or whatever, 5.5 months.
I'll have to break out the history book for that one, dude. Let's talk about the bargain bin tonight. Let's get some value plays from you guys in DFS on tonight's slate. Looks like here we've got 13 of them on the main slate. Steven, start me out. Value pitcher. Who are you looking at?
Yes, not a lot of options I'm excited about, especially when I'm gonna be rolling with Reed Detmers, who I really don't want to use too much. I'd love to use Trevor Rogers, but the Braves hit the lefty as well, so that's out of the question. I'd love to use Chris Flexen, but the Royals just simply don't strike out. They've been one of the toughest teams to strike out, dating even back to last year. So I guess that means I'm going to be going with Reed Detmers. Now, to his advantage, the O's are a team that have, and I'm talking about the Orioles, are a team that strike out a ton. Okay, thus far, 30.7% K rate. That's with 192 plate appearances against lefties. He's had two tough starts already to begin the season against two teams that really don't strike out. That's the Rangers and the Astros. So I can't fault him for not exactly racking up the strikeouts to begin. But if things play out as they should against this Orioles team, he could absolutely be viewed as a really solid value play tonight on a slate that, quite frankly, at least when it comes to pitching, does not have a lot of value to give. Okay, so how tough of a decision was this for you, Eric?
Actually, a pretty easy one because there's one guy I like way near the bottom, and that's Glenn Otto at 5,800. I actually really liked his numbers last year, and I'm saying that despite his 9.26 ERA and 6 starts. All the underlying numbers point to a pretty respectable performance. His strikeout rate, walk rate, and ground ball rate were all at least a percentage point and a half better than league average. So he's above average across the board. Only 7 other starters, or 7 total starters, I believe, in at least as many starts can say that. And it's a list that includes guys like Logan Webb, Pablo Lopez, Clayton Kershaw. So being solid across the board like that suggests that you should do a whole lot better than a 9.26 ERA. I'm not saying he's about to become Clayton Kershaw, but the building blocks of at least a respectable season were there in his very poor sample last season. And he gets to face Oakland in the Coliseum, one of the best pitchers' parks. This is an Oakland team that's been using Christian Betancourt as their first baseman / DH on a regular basis. He's like a bad offensive catcher, career 563 OPS. Maybe most famous for trying to become a two-way player. He went to Korea, was a below-average hitter over there, and he's hitting often like 5th while playing first base or DH. So aren't many easier matchups than this one. I think it's going to be a good season debut here for Otto.
Eric, the people watching around the world right now are like, but dude, I need to find some value in the infielder department. You would say who?
Yeah, the people around the world that I'm sure are watching us from Korea, I'm going to give them one of the former KBO stars, and that's Daryn Ruff at 2,400. He's had a very bad start to this season. Got to admit that. 13 games. He's got an OPS under 500. But I can't care too much about 13 games compared to what he's done across his career, which is absolutely mash lefties. He's struggled against righties. That's why he had to go overseas in search of regular work. He has a 685 career OPS against them. But against Southpaws, 927. And he should hit second. He should hit second or third. I believe he's hit third against righties and second against the two lefties the Giants have faced this season. And the lefty they get here is Patrick Corbin. 7.50 ERA through 3 starts, not striking out guys, walking too many. It's the sad late career of Patrick Corbin that we're used to. So I love any time we get Ruff against a weaker lefty, and that's certainly what we're getting here.
Steve, can you find me an infielder with some value?
Yeah, I actually had Ruff as well. And the
Whoa.
big reason was for everything that Eric just said. He really divulged into this so eloquently that I don't have much to add. But I will add this. I think we need to give a round of applause to Patrick Corbin. Has not allowed a single home run so far this season. That is an accomplishment that we did not see coming. I think it's very, I think he should put that on his mantle. Did not give up a home run through the first 2 starts. That is an accomplishment that nobody ever expected. But let me tell you something. Tonight, the streak ends. Daryn Ruff's going to hit 9 home runs off of Patrick Corbin tonight. No one even thinks that's possible, but he's going to hit them so far, they're going to count them as 2 apiece. That comes to 8. So, math is not my strong point, but Daryn Ruff, 2,400. I know the math on that one. That's a good value play.
Steve, we're in the bargain bin here. I need you to stick your arm real deep inside this barrel of bargains and find me an outfielder.
I must say, the camera work today has been great. So whoever's using the gimbal is doing a great job.
It is Samir. He's doing a great job.
I thought you looked a little tall. Marcelo Ozuna at 3K tonight is just laughable. 3K for Ozuna? Why? What is going on with the DraftKings algorithm that they're posting all these Braves players to be so cheap? But I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to take these players. I mean, you really can't take his 2021 numbers into consideration. He missed most of the year for reasons that I do not endorse at all. But you look at 2020, okay? Against lefties, a 527 WOBA, okay, that's really good. A 511 isolated power, oh my goodness. You look at his career numbers against lefties. 361 WOBA, 218 isolated power, and a 129 WRC+. Those are all great numbers. So the matchup tonight against, Rogers, who I would like to use, but the Braves hit lefties really well. So I think Ozuna at 3K is a joke, and I'll absolutely take that.
Okay, Eric, are you looking at a value play and saying, that's a joke, I'm taking that?
Yeah, there's another guy at basically the same tier who has a lot of his 2021 struggles baked into his dollar value, and that's Cody Bellinger at 3,100. I mean, I get why. He was absolutely awful in pretty much every way last season, but he's bouncing back this year. Through 12 games, hitting 279, 354, 535. There's a lot to like in his underlying numbers too, except for the strikeout rate, which is actually up over 31%. But what was happening to him a lot last year is that he wasn't hitting the ball nearly as hard, and he was hitting it into the air way too much. His launch angle soared up to 22.2 degrees, while his hard hit rate cratered to 34.4%. So when you hit the ball in the air and not very hard, you get a lot of weak flyouts. This year, that hard hit rate is up 12 points, and his launch angle is down about 7 degrees into a much more normal range. So now he's making hard contact, the kind of contact you want, and not just warning track flyouts. He'll get the platoon advantage here against Nick Martinez, who is a nice story coming back from Japan. Looks like he is a legitimate back-end major league starter, which is cool, but isn't somebody we should be at all scared about running hitters against in daily fantasy. So I like Bellinger a lot at this price. I'm not sure we'll get him at this price for too much longer if he keeps hitting like he's been hitting so far.
All right, before you two take off, let's go over to the DK Sportsbook. Steve, hook me up with an underdog on tonight's slate that you like. You get the first place Guardians. You get some plus money on them. They're visiting the Yankees in the Bronx.
Now, don't give me any suggestions. I already have my bet ready. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. If you had a guess which team in the league had the highest batting average as it stands right now, who do you think it would be?
I would go with the Guardians.
If that is incorrect. It is actually the Colorado Rockies.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know how, but that's how it stands right now. The numbers don't lie. They rank 6th in runs scored in the league right now as well. Now, I don't really put a lot of stock into batting average, but I think that is something that should be, given out and be impressive. So the Rockies tonight against the Tigers and Tariq Skubal, who loves to give up home runs. 36 last year. That was absolutely insane, the amount of home runs that he's given up. So with that reason alone, he's given up a ton of hard contact already, over 45%. I think there's a couple things you can do here. You can take the Rockies over 3.5 runs. I feel like that's a little bit too low for the way that this team is hitting. And then you can also take them, I don't mind a sprinkle on the money line as well to win this game. The Tigers bullpen, as you'd expect, has not been good thus far. And if the Rockies just continue to hit, then you're getting some pretty good value here on the Rockies tonight as underdogs on the road in Detroit.
Are you going to see Cabrera's 3,000th hit tonight?
They're going to walk him 5 times.
Okay. I support that. Eric, what do you got? You got an underdog for tonight?
Yeah, there's a really interesting one that kind of tests your philosophy on how much do you care about the first couple weeks of the season, and that's Marlins plus 125 over Atlanta. If you gave me that line and the starting pitchers, Trevor Rogers and Kyle Wright, late last season, I think everybody in the world would be all over that. I think we'd expect to see maybe minus 125 on behalf of the Marlins. I can see why the line's where it is, given the way the two pitchers have started their seasons. Rogers has been terrible, 12.15 ERA. Phillies absolutely crushed him in his last outing. There were even suspicions maybe he was tipping pitches. It was that bad. 6 strikeouts against 5 walks. There's not much to like there either, but at least his velocity is the same as last season, so I don't think there's a worry that his underlying skill set has significantly changed or that he's dealing with some sort of unreported injury. And he was absolutely dominant last season, 2.64 ERA, 28.5% strikeout rate. Kyle Wright, on the other hand, has been dominant through 2 starts this year, 1.64 ERA, 15 strikeouts against 1 walk. Maybe he's just for real and we're supposed to just buy in fully after 2 starts. But man, he was nowhere close to this over the last few years. In 70 innings, a 6.56 ERA, strikeout rate about 18%, walk rate just shy of 15%. So if you build in enough of the previous versions of these guys, I think the Marlins look like potentially favorites, even despite the fact that Atlanta has a better lineup. So I get why, based on the respective starts for these two pitchers, why the line is flipped from what it would be last year. But that might just be an overreaction, I think, to what is ultimately a very small sample, even though it's all we have to go on so far this season.
Steve, the team with the second best team batting average in Major League Baseball. Who is it?
Yeah, probably the Guardians.
Yeah, you nailed it.
But
all right.
but I didn't ask for the second.
No, you didn't. But I was very close.
That's like when you take a test and you'd be like, well, my second choice would have been B,
Exactly.
but the answer was A. It doesn't matter. You're wrong.
I feel like we went to school together. We just know each other. All right, guys, thanks so much. We got NASCAR, we got F1 coming up next. Pierce and Jeff. And hey, the gap between the two dudes in their season-long race for first place, little tighter. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time now for what has slowly become the highest rated Friday segment here on The Sweat. It's called Rubin is Racing. And we have DraftKings contributors here, Pierce Dietrich, who is a NASCAR expert, Jeff, new to the expertise field, when it comes to racing. And we need to update everyone on the standings after last week. So Jeff, congratulations. You have actually gained a little bit of ground because Pierce's pick of Denny Hamlin could not finish the race. Only managed 5 DraftKings fantasy points. Pathetic. That was at the Food City 400.
Awful.
But Ulrich, Chase Elliott, your pick, a little better, 38 points, a 9th place finish. You still have a massive chunk of ground to make up, but that's why we do this segment. And that's why I'm going to start with you today as we kind of break down DFS contests here for this weekend's NASCAR and F1 races. So the Xfinity Cup Series in Talladega, baby. You're not first, you're last. It's the Geico 500. 3 guys have a salary north of 10K. Which one do you want in your lineup, Ulrich?
Oh boy. I mean, you got Kyle Larson sitting there at 10-1 and it feels like no one's going to play him because, he's got poor track history and he hasn't done that much recently, but like the pick just seems to like it has to be Joey Logano here. You look at what the Ford cars have done at this track. You just look at last year, 9 of the top 13 were Fords and Logano has been great at this track, at this event. He was 3rd at this race last year. So Logano's coming in, he's driving fine. I think that this track just suits him just about perfectly. And then you've got the Ford trend. I think you have to go with him if you're starting over 10K. I'm not sure that you need to start over 10K this week, but like between those 3, I'll definitely lean Joey Logano.
Okay, Blaney, Logano, Larson. Who you want, Pierce?
This is all going as planned. I'm kind of reluctant to share my strategy just because I want to beat Jeff again this week because I knew exactly what he would do. The answer is you don't play any of those guys. You don't play anybody up near the front. At a plate track, you play the drivers starting in the back. Ignore the names. Ignore the salaries. Leave a ton of money on the table. What will happen at Talladega, Daytona, you name the tracks that are plate tracks. There's a bunch of wrecks. And the guys that survive, a couple of them will be nobodies, but they'll start in the very back and they'll score a bunch of points simply because they missed all of the wrecks and they will end up in the winning lineup. So again, don't pay up for anyone. Jeff's going to, and Jeff's going to learn that mistake.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. Play guys in the back. We don't know who's in the back yet, but that will be the strategy.
I love it. I love it. What about Bubba Wallace, Pierce? $8,100, defending track champion here. Won the most recent race at Talladega back in, I believe that was October. So how much interest in him?
Nothing against Bubba. You win a race at Talladega, congratulations, but a plate race win is luck. And to win a plate race based on a range-shortened race where he didn't really have to race to the end, that is also extremely lucky. So nothing against him. Again, here's the strategy this weekend. Forget about the names. Literally scratch, don't write on your monitor, but whatever you can do to ignore the names, do that. And your decision is, do you want to play drivers starting 20th or further back, 25th or further back? Maybe you get a little aggressive and you take some guys in 17th or 18th. That's it. That's the strategy. No more analysis. Play guys in the back, hope they don't wreck.
You going to roster Bubba Wallace, Jeff, $8,100?
Well, between Pierce calling me a square, he forgot to mention any drivers. He's not giving people any advice here. Yeah, I'm going to give you some advice. I think you should fade Bubba Wallace too. And my guy, Eric Almirola, is right there at 7,500. What does he do every time he comes to Talladega? He top 10s, top 15s, whatever. 15th at this race last year. You can play him at 7,500 for some nice value. You got Chris Boucher, or if he was in Canada, we'd call him Boucher probably. He's at 6,900. Again, I mean, a nice young racer playing well. He's not playing NASCAR.
Yeah,
he's driving well. And he's under 7K. He's got a good course or track. I can't get the golf out of my head. He's got great track history. Chris Boucher at 6,900 definitely in play too.
Well, hold on a second, because I think he was mentioned in your article here, Pierce. You say his plate track stats over the last 2 seasons might be the best in NASCAR as well.
If Boucher is a great play, Bubba is a good play if he starts in the back.
Yeah.
All the guys that he just mentioned, Eric Almirola went on an incredible tear at Talladega that we've never seen before. They've all consistently finished well, but they also flip a coin and they can wreck in these races. So yeah, I like Boucher.
Okay. All right. There he is. Wow. You and Jeff in agreement. It's adorable.
Is it just me, or does Pierce sound nervous this week?
He does.
On edge about his guy wrecking last week. Now he's really worried about it this week.
Absolutely.
I think I may have just set him off kilter a bit.
You've already lost.
Dude, listen, man. You're watching Netflix on his Wi-Fi. You are inside his head right now, Ulrich. So let's go to F1. Let's see if you could smoke him in F1. Who is going to be your top scoring driver this week? Jeff.
I'm gonna go with Carlos Sainz Jr. here. The qualifying, it was really close between Leclerc. In the Friday, the first, not the qualifying, the first just test lap, whatever they call it. Leclerc was inches ahead of Sainz Jr. But you read what has been said about Ferrari, and they're saying, well, we're not quite ready to just commit to Leclerc so far this year. I don't know. I think this is a good race, and with a little bit of rain on tap, I think it's a good race to maybe go down to Sainz Jr. this week for GPPs. It's obviously, it's a bit of a long shot play. It's boom or bust because, you just look at the betting odds. It's Verstappen and Leclerc with very short odds. But I really do feel like Carlos Sainz Jr. at some point is going to pop up and perhaps just make a surprise, victory lap. So I think this is a good race to do it. We've seen Spaniards, come through at this track in the past. I'm going to go with him at 15K.
Pierce, talk to me.
You got to stick with the Ferraris. This is their home track, and they are the fastest in the field this season. They didn't even bring any updates or upgrades to this race because it is a shorter session this weekend. Other teams have tried, but with the rain and limited practice, they're probably not going to make any gains. So then it does come down to Leclerc and Sainz, and Leclerc has been perfect this year. Now, in Jeff's defense, and I kind of agree with him, if Leclerc makes a mistake, which he hasn't done all season, then Sainz definitely is going to have the opportunity. As Jeff mentioned, Sainz probably had the best car at Australia, had an issue in Q3, had a clutch issue at the beginning of the race. At the beginning of an F1 race, you can't communicate with your team. The radios are turned off, so that compounded. He tried to make up for the gap later on in the race, and he got stuck in the dirt. So Sainz is right there with him, but practice one, Leclerc was pushing the limits. He was the fastest again. You like that he's pushing the limits because he's going to know where that edge is in the race, and that will help him be perfect. I'll have to go with Leclerc, but Sainz isn't too far behind him.
All right, dude. But here's the thing. Can he even focus on this race? Do you see the story that he had his $320,000 watch stolen right off his wrist as he was signing autographs? Who wears watches that expensive? Even if you have that money, why are you spending that money on a watch? He's got to be going crazy right now, dude. Pierce.
Have you seen these F1 guys? They're like the royalty of the modern world. They are the real deal. So they're the ones that wear those watches, and I wouldn't really worry. He's probably got that watch insured. People get Domino's pizzas insured, so I think a $250,000 watch probably insured.
Does that have a calculator on it?
Yeah. It tells me I have no events today as well, so real busy Friday ahead. Jeff, you got to think that he is shooketh right now. $320,000 just ripped right off you. The dude probably sold it and is probably living in a new house right now.
The person who took it, is probably happy. Leclerc he's probably had 3 watches mailed to him by his sponsors since that happened. So no, I really wouldn't worry too much about it. As Pierce said, these guys get treated ridiculous over there, and one more win, and he'll probably buy himself 5 new watches. So.
What'd you say, Pierce?
This could be a stunt. This race is sponsored by Rolex.
Oh, actually,
All makes sense.
It 100% is now. All right, before you dudes take off, let's circle real quick back to NASCAR. Who is your pick to win this week, Pierce?
You got to take Gregson starting in the back because even if he wrecks, he won't lose points. And Jeff's going to pick a guy up front. That guy has a 50-50 chance of wrecking, and he'll probably lose points.
All right, Jeff, you loser. Let's get your pick.
I'm going to go with Eric Almirola. Just to mess with Pierce's head. We're going to get a top 10 finish. We're not going to wreck because he never wrecks here. And Pierce is going to lose again.
All right. Well, according to Pierce's article from 2018 to 2020, your dude, Jeff, earned 8 consecutive top 10 finishes at Talladega. So I don't think Pierce hates it. And Pierce, once again, extremely nervous, especially as you close the gap slowly. We all know this is a marathon. It's a long, long season. It is not a sprint. Both of you are coming back later. We're going to talk some top 5 busts, maybe a current quarterback right now in the NFL that you two possibly could consider a bust. But right after this break, we got some Stanley Cup odds to talk about and a team who has locked up the #1 seed in the East. Wow, they are beasts right now. Ow! Big night around the NHL last night. Not so much tonight. Panthers just rolling right now. An absolute freight train through the NHL, winning their 12th straight game. Knocked off the Red Wings. They clinched the top seed in the East. Nobody can stop them. Best record in the NHL, but second best odds to win the Stanley Cup behind the Avalanche. RotoWire's Paul Bruno, I have a question for you. Should Florida be the favorite, or are these odds appropriate?
Look, based on what we've seen year to date, I absolutely agree with them being the favorite. But a cautionary note, they may have picked the wrong time to get hot. The right time to get hot is at the start of the playoffs, not a month before. So just keep that in your back pocket when they do get upset somewhere along the way, say the second round against a certain team that I like. In any case, certainly they are legit, but they've earned it. They are playing in the best division in hockey. And 4 of the top teams in the NHL are in the Atlantic Division. So kudos to Florida for doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, as for tonight, and talking about Colorado here, dude, Nathan McKinnon now at the top of the salaries. He goes up against the second highest priced player, Connor McDavid. Like, if you had to choose between these two studs, like, which one would you go with?
I'm going to go with McDavid for a few reasons, Emerson. McKinnon is going into the matchup without both of his regular line mates, Landeskog and Renton on the shelf with an injury and a flu bug, I guess, are the two issues. And in addition, they got very little to play for. They've got their position locked up, whereas Edmonton's fighting for playoff positioning. So they're motivated and they're at full strength. So all that adds up to a lean in favor of McDavid for me. Both players have 15 points in their last 10 games, so there's nothing to split hairs there. But I do note that McKinnon has been outshot by McDavid to the tune of 52-38 over the last 10 games, and that's a factor in DK scoring. So I'll go with all of that in favor of the Edmonton captain.
All right, so if people are spending like a boatload of cash tonight, hook me up with some value.
Arturi Lehkonen moves up to left wing on the top line for the Avs, costing only $3,800 after scoring 7 points on 32 shots the last 10 games played. So that's a must. And then on the flip side, Jesse Puljujarvi in the same game, expecting to line up alongside McDavid and Evander Kane. That's a primo opportunity, and he only cost $3,600 there. And he's averaging 3 shots on goal over his last 8 games, so that's another good pick. But if you're not looking at the marquee matchup, another guy to consider, Jack Ruslovic, is on a hot goal streak with 7 in his last 10 games played as his club, Columbus Blue Jackets, hosts the visiting Ottawa Senators. They're not very good defensively, and he's slated to play second-line minutes as well as getting power play time. He's been among their most consistent producers ever since he was traded there last season, and that makes him well worth the $3,300 price tag tonight.
All right, on the sportsbook, looks like all games tonight, 4 of them, all have 6.5 totals. Which one do you like to go over?
I expect Ottawa-Columbus, the game, to be a high-scoring game, largely because neither team is among the top defensive clubs in the league, and they have more faith in their high-end offensive skill players, who are, some of them are really rolling right now. So I say take the over in that one, because it's going to be a loosely played game. And the thought of a game between Colorado and Edmonton conjures up images for me of a lot of goal scoring. I expect that to be the case. I know the Oilers have tightened things up recently, but that's not their DNA, and everybody knows it. Even though the Avs are missing a couple of their top guys, there's still a ton of talent there. This will be another high-scoring tilt.
And hook me up, player prop. You like on this 4-game slate before you take off?
I love the Ottawa Senators' big guns. I'll take Brady Tkachuk to score a goal in a game against Columbus, coming in on a roll with 5 goals and 13 points in his last 10 starts. That'll pay at plus 160. And if Tim Stützle plays, there's some doubt about his status. But if he goes, add him in there. If he scores, he's on a heater right now. That'll pay up to plus 225. And in another game that I'm looking at, the Minnesota Wild have their offense in high gear. It's been that way for more than a month. And a matchup at home against Seattle, it should be points night there. So look at the first line for Kirill Kaprizov. He's got 5 goals and 12 points on 32 shots. If he scores tonight, that's a plus 105. And then Ryan Hartman on the same line at center is plus 160 to score a goal. He's also got a bit of a heater going on with 5 goals in his last 10 games played.
All right, Paul, you are the man, but we teased earlier in this show that we're going to begin our countdown of top 5 NFL busts of all time. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to unveil number 5. Not a shocker to see Cleveland in this position. So picture this. We have a 6'4" college quarterback stud out of Kentucky. What could go wrong?
A quarterback that went number 1 overall and accomplished absolutely nothing.
Number 5 on the all-time bust list, Tim Couch.
Tim Couch shouldn't shoulder all the blame here. This is more a symptom of the Cleveland Browns.
Another Browns guy who didn't pan out. Cleveland just generally has a losing environment when it comes to their NFL team.
Taking somebody that is a really good player in college that might not have the skill set to be quite as good in the NFL and putting them in a situation where there already aren't good players. This isn't the type of player that can elevate the rest of the team. That's going to be your perfect formula for a bust right there.
Tim Couch made the bottom of my list, and I almost didn't put him on because Tim Couch is one of those examples where he had some injuries. He went to Cleveland. He got sacked a million times.
He led the league in sacks as a rookie. I think he ended up with 56 that year.
The Browns, they had, I think, 11 picks in that 1999 draft with Tim Couch. They didn't take a single offensive lineman.
Offensive line, anytime with a quarterback, you're only as good as your offensive line.
It doesn't come as a surprise and why it didn't pan out.
You draft a quarterback number one, you're selecting number one for a reason. It's because you don't have other good players on your team. And when you put a quarterback into that situation, it can sometimes be unfair.
You're doomed to fail. And from there, he couldn't bounce back.
Tim Couch, a little bit of victim of circumstance, but he was a bust in the sense that maybe he just wasn't quite as good as he was put out to be too. This is a guy who took a ton of sacks in college, was not mobile. Donovan McNabb went obviously, later than him.
It's a pocket guy versus a mobile guy. Everybody has their preferences. I personally like a pocket guy more, so I can understand making that mistake.
If the same two quarterbacks were going in the draft this year, I think it would actually be flipped. I think McNabb would probably be the more likely to go number one overall.
Clearly, when you look at what occurred in their NFL careers, Donovan McNabb was the better player by a mile.
As much as he is a bust and he does deserve to be on my list, I do think with him, his team was a factor in all this.
Tim Couch is one of those guys who it's kind of just nondescript his time in the NFL. He almost just faded into the background, like in the Back to the Future picture.
Maybe it's not all Tim Couch's fault, but in terms of what he produced on the field, he was one of the quicker collapses of the number one overall quarterbacks that we've seen.
And we will continue our countdown of top 5 NFL busts of all time, according to our analysts, on Monday here on The Sweat, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So let's bring back Pierce Dietrich. Let's bring back Jeff Ulrich, because it is a Football Friday. We'll get to some USFL picks here in just a second. But like you're thinking about Couch number one overall, and then you think about their other number one overall pick that they took a few years back, quarterback Baker Mayfield. As things stand right now, Pierce, do you consider Baker a bust?
No, I don't. The Browns have been to the playoffs 3 times in the last 30 years, and Baker was one of the guys that took them there, so that's kind of a big deal. Not only did he take them to the playoffs, they beat their rival Steelers in the playoffs, so people might hate him right now, but give it a couple years, he's going to be a legend. He'll probably end up opening a bar down in the flats in Cleveland and will be some sort of hero like Kozar or Testaverde. Just wait. I guess the rest of the league can consider him a bust, but I think the people in Cleveland will grow to love him.
I mean, before this injury-plagued season last year, Jeff, it did look like he was going to be leading Cleveland to possibly some new heights.
It is pretty hard to call Baker Mayfield a bust. I mean, he was first overall, so I kind of understand why we're giving him the bust label. I mean, if you're first overall and you're already moving on and at odds with the team that drafted you, it really hasn't worked out. But at the same time, it's a player with 92 touchdowns and 56 interceptions. It's not like he hasn't played that bad. He's also been the victim of circumstance. The circumstance of being in one of the deepest drafts ever and then getting picked first overall in that draft. If he'd gone to the back of the first round, people would probably be calling Baker Mayfield like a very good, value sort of at that round, because late first round quarterbacks don't always work out. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of with Pierce on this one. I won't call him a bust, and I think he's still super young, lots of time to turn it around and really kind of maybe even live up to that number one potential.
All right, well, the late first round quarterback that year, last pick, that was Lamar Jackson. So let's have a little bit of fun here. Let's redraft that 2018 draft then, Jeff. If you were the Browns, who are you taking number one overall?
Man, I mean, this draft is it's so ridiculous. You could pretty much, there's literally 5. Jare Alexander is a name that I almost want to go with in this one. Quentin Nelson. Pierce is going to probably pick Quentin Nelson because he's so enamored with the O-line. But the answer is Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Josh Allen's just don't fall out of trees. I mean, this is a player who's essentially a running back, fullback back there in terms of his running instincts. We know he has the arm, but just the way he's developed into an accurate downfield passer with all those other things combined. I mean, if you can't take Patrick Mahomes out of any quarterback in the league, I think the answer is Josh Allen. So the fact that we'd be having this discussion, who would we take? It's got to be him for me.
I mean, Pierce, they nailed Nick Chubb in the second round, so they have that going for them, which is nice. But let's be real. Like, if Cleveland could redo it, they'd be like, all right, we'll take Sam Darnold, or maybe even Josh Rosen there. But who would you take?
Yeah, you're probably expecting me to pick offensive lineman, but I'll go full galaxy brain. I'd pick Baker Mayfield again. In 2020, his stats were great. They went to the playoffs. This team looked good. This year, he threw for 3,000 yards this season in 14 games. He was injured. His offensive line was injured. He doesn't have any receivers. Yeah, you got Jarvis Landry. Great. You need a 5-yard slant. You got it. But he has no weapons outside of that, and that's barely even a weapon. And then he's also in a play-action offense from the 1990s. Tecmo Bowl has a better playbook than what the Browns had. I think Mayfield is fine. I think we're piling on him.
Fine, but he's not better than Josh Allen.
Or Lamar Jackson.
He went to the playoffs, the second half of the playoffs in his second season. What has Deshaun Watson ever done?
Deshaun Watson?
No, dude. Okay. Hey, listen, Lamar Jackson. You're telling me right now, if you had a choice between Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield, you were picking once again, knowing what you know now in the 2018 draft, you would still take Baker over him. You would take Baker over Josh Allen.
Yes. Jackson's not going to last with his playing style. We already have seen him start to fall apart.
We don't know. So same with Baker. Oh, Pierce. I love you so much, and it's such a pleasure to have you as a part of this team. Mr. Contrarian, I love it. Let's get to
so many names they could have picked.
Jari
Alexander. Hey, Derwin James.
You could have gone with Sony Michel. Hell, I would have even said, I'm going to go ahead and take Nick Chubb overall this time.
Look, I'm team owner guy, so of course I'm going to be team Baker.
All right, who you paying up for tonight? 4-game slate, USFL, Pierce.
Lance Lenoir. Tough with the French name. He almost made the Dallas Cowboys roster a couple years ago. He's very active for Michigan in their first week matchup. I imagine he's going to have another big game. He's facing the Generals defense that allowed the most passing yards, most passing touchdowns last week. Also, the rest of the Michigan wide receivers are all banged up. He could have had a bigger week last week if the Michigan quarterbacks weren't throwing interceptions and fumbling left and right. So Lance Lenoir, if I could say it right, is the guy to go with.
Jeff, who do you want, man?
I'm still rattled from that.
I know.
Kyle Slaughter. Every week. I'm just taking Kyle Slaughter as my quarterback every week. 27 pass attempts. You saw a lot of teams come out in the USFL first week. What did they try and do? Run the ball a million times. Kyle Aletta threw the ball 10 times and completed 2 passes. Kyle Slaughter attempted 27 passes. He had a very decent 63% completion rate. He also added 30 yards on the ground. I've said it before. I've said it again. He's the best quarterback in the USFL. He will eventually light up a couple defenses. You stick with him, and you can take his favorite target at tight end, and you can pair it with him. Sal Cannella, tight end. 7 targets last week. Led the Breakers. I like stacking that duo. Pay up for them.
Again, 4-game slate for the whole weekend. 1 game tonight, 2 games tomorrow. There's a Sunday afternoon game at 3 o'clock. What about a value play, Jeff?
Yeah, value is it's a different story. I mean, for me, I think you have to go to running back and just look at guys who had good usage and are on decent teams. Like, I think you can certainly look at TJ Logan on the Breakers as well. Got 15 carries, also was involved in the passing game. The Breakers didn't use their wide receivers that much. We'll see if that changes. But, Pierce mentioned a couple other teams. I do like targeting Philly a lot this week. I think Philly is going to absolutely mash Pittsburgh. So Darnell Holland at 8,200. I don't even really mind that. I know he's up there. It's not really a value pick, but in terms of like who you should be looking at, that's who I would be going with at running back.
All right, we got less than a minute to go in show. Have at it, Pierce.
All right, sticking with Philadelphia, they're going to have a couple wide receivers out in Devin Gray and Chris Rowland, who led the league in receptions last week. So DeAndre Overton is really cheap for Philly. You're going to want to target him. Also, you want to go after Jordan Sewell in that Philly high-paced offense. I don't know about Holland because they're going to have 3 running backs active this week, so you might want to be careful there. Bailey Gaither is a receiver who we paired up with Josh Love, who was his quarterback in college at San Jose State. And so he got 8 targets last week, and their leading receiver will be out, so I imagine Gaither is going to get a lot of receptions. And then tonight, Trey Williams, over 50 yards on the ground last week, 3 or 4 targets in the air. It's really important in these low-scoring offenses to target PPR points. So Trey Williams for the Generals.
All right, dude. That's all the time we have. Jeff, have a great weekend. To our Baker Mayfield stan, Pierce Dietrich, you as well. I hope you have a great Saturday and Sunday, and we'll catch you guys here on Monday. We got the slates with Steve and Lamarca. That's at 5 o'clock Eastern time here on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter pages. And then Madden at high noon. That kicks off in just a few minutes. So everyone, have a great weekend. Safe weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Woo-hoo. Whoa.